Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Committee on Public Safety for the Assembly. This meeting will commence. I would like to ask the committee secretary to please take roll.
Arambula.
Present.
Hagman. Amiano. Furutani. Gilmore. Present. Hill. Here. Ma.
A quorum is present. To begin with, would like to announce the proposed consent calendar and see if any member wishes to pull the items from the consent for separate discussion and or vote. The items are number 3, Senate Bill 52 by Senator Correa, dealing with public safety, Medal of Valor. Number 5, SB 150 by Senator Wright, dealing with sentencing. Number 7, SB 164 by Senator Strickland, dealing with public safety and welfare. Number 8, SB 175 by Senator Onestad, firearms with amendments. Number 10, SB 352 by Senator Dutton, dealing with juvenile offenders. Number 11, SB 432 by Senator Runner, dealing with restitution and crime victims. Number 13 by Senator Hollingsworth, dealing with sex offenders, SB 583. And finally, number 14, SB 748 by Senator Leno, dealing with witness relocation and assistance. If there are no members that wish to pull any of these items from the consent, the chair will entertain a motion for approval of the consent. Mr. Amiano made the motion. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote.
Arambula.
Aye.
Arambula, aye. Hagman. Amiano. Amiano, aye. Furutani. Gilmore. Aye. Gilmore, aye. Hill. Aye. Hill, aye. Ma. Ma, aye. That is out.
We'll place that on call for
It's out.
just for add-on. We will turn to the first presenter this morning, Senator Benoit, on SB 154. Welcome, Senator. Please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm here to present SB 154 that deals with boating under the influence. Since the mid-1990s, the DMV operated under the assumption that they had the statutory authority necessary to suspend driver's licenses of individuals who had been convicted of boating under the influence. In 2008, the California Court of Appeals ordered an end to this process. The court's argument for halting this process was based solely on the fact that the DMV lacked explicit statutory authority to suspend these licenses, and it was not based on the policy. SB 154 would provide the DMV with the necessary statutory authority to suspend the driver's licenses of individuals who have a prior BUI or DUI and mandate that the violators attend an alcoholic education class, as is the case in a DUI violation. Thank you. I'd like to take the amendments proposed by the committee, which are focused on reinstating what is already in law in other places as it deals with this BUI. Particularly, the amendments allow a court to take a person's income into consideration when imposing fines, along with the amendment that would permit the court to have discretion in very limited circumstances to grant an exception for striking a prior DUI, BUI, when it is in the interest of justice. And again, this is in conformance with law in other areas. I appreciate the committee's staff help in preparing these amendments. SB 154 has received bipartisan support and was unanimously supported in the Senate Public Safety Committee and on the Senate floor. We have a couple of witnesses here very strongly supporting. I'd like to speak very briefly.
Sergeant Doug Powell from the Cal State Sheriff's Association and the California Boater Safety Officers Association. Members, last year in 2008, we had 48 fatalities in the state. Out of those 48 fatalities, 21 of those fatalities involved alcohol-related. That's almost near 50% of our alcohol-related boating accidents. That doesn't include just the regular accidents where people are injured. I'm a Marine boating sergeant, and my first fatality this year was a person that was under the influence of alcohol, a 0.21%. We strongly recommend the passage of 154, and appreciate your support and keeping our waterways safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support.
Mr. Chairman, members, Bill Kraus representing the Marina Recreation Association, the California Association of Harbor Masters and Port Captains, California Marine Parks and Harbors Association, Western Boater Safety Group, California Yacht Brokers Association, and the Northern California Marine Association. We represent pretty much all facets of the boating industry, the businesses, generally the businesses associated with boating, as well as individual boaters. The Western Boater Safety Group is 30,000 individual boaters, the most directly affected by this legislation, and there is unanimous support from the industry, from the boaters. It makes a lot of sense, and it's a good piece of legislation, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Lieutenant Barbara Ferguson, representing San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. We're in support of this bill because we have over 90 miles of waterways on the Colorado River. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Corey Salzillo on behalf of the California District Attorneys Association. We're in support.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Hearing and seeing none, there was a motion and a second. Any additional comments or questions by committee members? Yes, Member Amiano.
Just a comment. I applaud the senator for this, and it probably should have happened years ago. There's been lots of deaths and maimings, and it's just part of the culture and it's considered okay to drink when you're on a boat. And I don't want to be a prude about it, but it's really gotten out of hand.
I agree. Thank you.
Young people particularly. So.
I agree. But if I could just close on that point, in my 30 years in the patrol, I watched the evolution where drinking and driving home from the Christmas party was just part of the culture, to that doesn't happen anymore. I think it's transferred, though, to this is a place where we can still get drunk and drive high-powered vehicles. We need to change that mentality.
Very well.
Okay. I'll drink to that.
Comments?
Oh.
Yeah. Then the matter's been moved and seconded. A roll call vote.
Arambula?
Aye.
Arambula, aye. Hagman? Aye. Hagman, aye. Amiano? Amiano, aye. Furtani? Gilmore? Aye. Gilmore, aye. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Ma? Ma, aye. Bill's out.
That bill is out. Thank you for presenting, Senator.
Thank you.
Sergeant, do we have other presenters? Oh, yes. The chair has received correspondence from Senator Oropesa that reads, it is with regret I cannot present my elder abuse bill SB 18 due to illness. I am respectfully requesting my senior legislative consultant, Lynn Jensen, to present in my stead. That shall be accepted. So, Ms. Jensen, if you'd come forward and present on the bill.
I want to thank the chair and the members for granting me this great consideration to present on behalf of my bill, or my boss, who is sidelined with a sinus infection this morning. Mr. Chair and members, SB 18 would increase fines on those who repeatedly abuse dependent adults and senior citizens 65 and older. Specifically, it would increase the fines from $6,000 to $10,000 for those placing an elder or dependent adult in situations where great bodily harm or death is likely. This fine would apply only to repeat offenders. Anecdotal evidence as well as hard numbers from various law enforcement agencies make it clear that elder abuse is still very much a hidden, pervasive, and deadly crime. In February 2009, according to the State Health and Human Services Agency, there were over 800 confirmed cases of physical and mental elder and dependent adult abuse. That's over 800 in just 1 month. And it is estimated that over 80% of all elder abuse is not reported.
Move the bill.
It is vital that enforcement efforts
The bill
be
has
ramped
been
up.
moved by the Vice Chair, Mr. Hagman, and seconded by Ms. Moss. So that usually is a clue to say in conclusion.
Thank you, and I request your support.
Any questions or comments? Any witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair and members, Corey Salzillo on behalf of the California District Attorneys Association in support.
Any additional witnesses? Please come forward.
I'm Margie Metzler with Gray Panthers, and we are in support of this as well.
Thank you. Any additional witnesses in support? Any in opposition? Questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Matt Gray on behalf of Taxpayers for Improving Public Safety. We don't disagree that the harm of elders is a serious offense. However, we think this legislation is as close to ineffective as possible. People who abuse the elderly, don't really care if it's $2,500 or $5,000 or $10,000. This is not something that's going to prevent the harm from occurring, and that's our main concern. I think if we focused as much effort as we do on this legislation on actually preventing the offense, for example, this bill would require that the offense actually occur, and therefore the creation of a new victim, and therefore one of the elderly is harmed. And we think that we should instead focus on some sort of intervention and prevention instead of simply raising fines when there's been no showing at all that increasing fines will have any effect at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, are there any questions or comments by committee members? If not, the motion, there is a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, roll call vote.
Arambula?
Aye.
Arambula, aye. Hagman? Aye. Hagman, aye. Amiano? Aye. Amiano, aye. Furutani? Gilmore? Aye. Gilmore, aye. Hill? Hill, aye. Ma? Ma, aye. Bill's out.
Senator Pavley, welcome. Please come forward.
Good morning. Thank you for coming twice. 2 times. It's my fault. And you, Jessica, too. Sí, claro que sí.
Welcome once again, whenever you're prepared.
Thank you very much, Chair Arambula. Members, Senate Bill 239 is sponsored by the California District Attorneys Association, and it's designed to give law enforcement better tools to fight an epidemic of mortgage fraud right here in California. Remarkably, despite the high volume of these crimes over the past year or two, and despite the fact that California has the 8th highest incident of mortgage fraud in the nation, our state relies on a confusing patchwork of penalties to fight this type of fraud. Senate Bill 239 will give more muscle to our fraud fight by making California the 5th state in the nation to have a dedicated mortgage fraud statute in the law. This bill clearly defines the crime of mortgage fraud and clarifies that such fraud is punishable as a wobbler and can be charged as an alternate felony misdemeanor if the alleged fraud meets the monetary threshold for grand theft, currently at $400. The bill also allows law enforcement to obtain fraud-related evidence such as lender and broker records. Mortgage fraud cases are a paper chase. They are complex and very document-driven. Obtaining these additional records will help prosecutors save time in determining what cases are worthy to pursue, given the evidence at hand. Mortgage fraud is one of the most economically destructive crimes in the country, and we need to be clear in California law that we are serious about stopping exploitative practices frequently directed at seniors or low-income Californians. A dedicated mortgage fraud statute will also help us track these cases and assist law enforcement in assessing federal funds and grants to more comprehensively combat mortgage fraud. With me today, I have Mike Fitzsimmons, Deputy District Attorney from Santa Clara County, Jessica Fry, a staff attorney with the Fair Housing Law Project, and Antonio and Jesus Arreola, 2 of the victims in this mortgage fraud case brought last year in San Jose.
And Senator, just to let you know, the bill has been moved by Assemblymember Hill and seconded by Assemblymember Ma.
Thank you. And we'll, Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Mike Fitzsimmons from the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office, our Real Estate Fraud Unit. We sorely need this bill to make our ability to fight mortgage fraud more effective. We are simply swimming in a sea of paperwork and complaints right now, and it's very difficult to address all of the complaints that we are receiving from constituents, and we would ask for your consideration on this bill.
Thank you.
Good
Yes,
morning.
please.
Jessica Fry from the Fair Housing Law Project, and we're here in support. I'll just leave it at that and translate for my clients who we're representing in a case that has been going on for about 2.5 years now with over 130 victims of mortgage fraud.
Okay. Bienvenidos. Buenos días.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días a todos. Primeramente, quiero decirles que estamos aquí lastimados de un fraude que me hicieron a mí, a mi esposa y a mis hijos. Es triste que le saquen a uno a...
Le voy a pedir que
perdón.
tome una pausa para que puedan interpretar lo que ha dicho.
Sí.
I've asked the witness to pause so that the interpreter can catch up.
Disculpe, sí, está bien.
No hay por qué.
Thank you, and welcome. Now I lost my place. So, good morning, everyone. We're here today, my wife and I, because we were hurt my wife and my children and I were hurt in a mortgage fraud case.
Lo que estamos aquí para ver si hay ¿cómo se puede decir? Algo que a ver si se puede cambiar un poco las leyes un poco más fuertes para las personas que nos han hecho fraudes no nomás a mí, a miles de gentes.
We're here today because we want to see if there's something that we can do, something that we can do to change the laws even a little and make them stronger.
Una cosa simple, me di cuenta yo que me habían sacado $85,000 porque fui a hacer mis taxis y ahí el que me hizo los taxis miró que decía una carta que me habían dado a mí $85,000 cuando yo nunca recibí ni un penny de eso.
We're here because what happened to me is I found out that $80,000 were taken from me. I didn't realize until I went to do my taxes. We went to do our taxes and we found out that $85,000 had been taken, but I hadn't even received a penny.
Bajo ese mal refinanciamiento, tuvimos que abandonar la casa, la tuvimos que perder.
Because of a bad refinancing, we had to leave our house. We had to lose it.
Hubo un tiempo que tuvimos que salir de la casa, no sé a dónde ir, el crédito dañado. Tuvimos que vivir un tiempo con unos amigos en la sala.
There was a time that when we had to leave the house, we didn't know where to go. We had to live for a time with our friends in their living room.
Es triste y doloroso por el crédito de uno que nadie te quiere rentar una casa, un apartamento.
It's sad because of the house and because of our bad credit, nobody wants to rent us a place to live, a house.
Y a veces me pregunto yo, si yo voy a una tienda y me robo un dulce de 5 centavos, automáticamente ya estoy arrestado. ¿Y por qué otras gentes siguen trabajando y en veces nosotros hay pruebas?
At times I ask myself, why is it that somebody can go to the store and steal a candy bar that's, for 5 cents, and they will be automatically arrested, and yet here there are people that are continuing to work.
Pues muchas gracias por escucharme. Dios quiera que esté bien todo. Gracias.
Thank you very much for having us here. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you to everyone. And if I may just give a little backstory, it's Mr. Arriola and Mrs. Arriola are victims of a case where there were 3 loans, 2 subprime loans, and a 3rd silent loan. And when he went to get his refinance with his mortgage broker, she put them in this 3rd silent loan without saying anything, told the bank that it was money from the homeowners, and just took that money for herself. And so took a lot of equity, and at the same time, because of the economy, Mr. Ariola, who was a truck driver, had less money to pay. The subprime loans also increased in their interest rate, and they were simply unable to pay and lost their house about a year and a half or 2 years ago. And so that's just a little background as to what he was talking about with the $80,000.
Una pregunta más. Yo soy una persona diabético y no le hace que tome en veces la medicina. Siempre ando con mis problemas, pues ando manejando porque tengo que sacar para comer para mis hijos, pero mi azúcar siempre anda 200, 300.
I'm a person who's diabetic, and sometimes when I don't take my medication, because I get sick, and because I have to keep on working, my sugar levels are really high, sometimes 200 or 300.
Es todo, señores. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arriola and Mrs. Arriola. I'm very sorry what happened to you, and I'm very pleased that you came today to share your experiences and the reasons for why we need to come up with additional remedies to make our laws stronger to prevent this kind of fraud. So, muchísimas gracias por estar aquí.
Gracias, señores.
Additional witnesses in support.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dan Filizzato on behalf of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Our office has been working for the last 3 years on ways to strengthen our real estate fraud laws, and we believe that this bill is a very needed and important part of that process.
The county's been a real leader in this area.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Corey Salzillo on behalf of the California District Attorneys Association. We're the sponsors of the bill.
Thank you. Additional comments in support? Any comments in opposition? If you'd use that microphone there, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Matt Gray on behalf of Taxpayers for Improving Public Safety. We do not have a registered opposed position on this, and we do look forward to working with the author. There is one caveat to this bill which ought to be considered, and that is the way the bill is written. It actually would ensnare people who would misrepresent information by signing certain documents, and that situation is such that there are people who negotiate these loans and then they find a third party to refinance a house under their name in order to rent the house back to the original owners for a rent-to-own scheme. The third party is not necessarily privy to the information that is in the contracts and that is being misrepresented. However, when it comes time for the district attorneys to prosecute, they do prosecute that third party who was, and I actually know of a specific case that Sacramento County just did and is still going through right now. So unfortunately, these people who had no other intent other than to invest in a property are getting prosecuted. And so that's something we look forward to working with the author on, and I hope it does not affect today's vote. Thank you.
I see the author has made note of that, and I'm sure we'll follow up appropriately.
Yes, or I can have Mr. Fitzsimmons respond if you would like.
Would prefer just to have you give closing comments. We trust that you'll deal with it.
Thank you very much, Chair Ramula. And I want to thank Antonio and Jesus for coming all the way from San Jose. I wanted to put a human face on what mortgage fraud means to families and communities, affecting lots of property value, destroying lives. And I want to thank the California District Attorneys Association for bringing this bill to my attention. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much. Are there motions on this item? There was a motion and a second. Very well. Additional comments or questions? Member Amiano.
Just quickly, again, thank you so much to the Senator. I look at the list of schemes that we know of. It's very creative, very predatory, very, very cruel. So we have to keep a step ahead. And I think the main element here for me is how this is also connected, as you mentioned, to the foreclosure crisis that we're having. So good work, everybody.
Additional comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, roll call vote.
Rambula?
Aye.
Rambula, aye. Hagman? Aye. Hagman, aye. Amiano? Aye. Amiano, aye. Furtani? Aye. Furtani, aye. Gilmore? Aye. Gilmore, aye. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Ma? Bill's out.
Bill is out. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. Next is Senator Flores, SB 135. Senator?
won't be long, Mr. Amrila. Good morning. Members, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members. Members, this bill is Senate Bill 135, and it bans the inhumane practice of tail docking. And this practice is simply inhumane and unnecessary. Tail docking is performed on some dairy cattle in this state and results in removing of 1/2 of a dairy cow's tail without anesthesia. There have been no opposition to this bill in principle. However, Mr. Chair, there's been some concern with respect to what happens during an emergency. When we originally introduced the bill, it required a dairyman or rancher to have a veterinarian perform any tail amputation procedure in an emergency. The dairyman raised a good point, which is that sometimes during an emergency situation, it would cause more pain to the animal than to wait for a vet, then to take immediate action. That made some sense to us, so we proposed an amendment that said in an emergency, you do what you need to do, but you have to call a vet afterward to do a checkup. The cattlemen then objected again to this amendment because sometimes their members are, as they say, are in such remote locations that a visit from a vet isn't practical. Mr. Chair, this makes some sense to me again. However, we worked out another amendment. This simply said that we'd like to offer this as an author's amendment today, and the amendment is very simple. It says that in an emergency, you should perform any tail amputation procedure in consultation with a vet where practical. And it's clear to me, members, that consultation simply means a phone call. And we believe the practical standard of consultation recognizes that sometimes even cattlemen may even be in areas where they don't have cell phone reception and may not have a satellite phone. So this amendment preserves the spirit of the bill while it protects the industry's concerns. But yet, Mr. Chairman, can tell you that the opposition continues to say no. They're saying no, so I can just summarize, Mr. Chair, to requiring a vet perform an emergency amputation. That's the purpose of the bill. They're saying no to requiring a vet to do a follow-up visit after an emergency amputation. And now they're even saying no to making a phone call in an emergency situation. So I'm not sure how much further we can go, Mr. Chairman. So we would ask that the amendments offered today would move forward as is. And we have done our best, but this is about as far as we can go on the bill. I would ask for an aye vote. We do have witnesses in support.
Yes, witnesses in support, please.
Hi, I'm Wayne Pacelli. I'm President and CEO of the Humane Society of the United States, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. Thanks to the Majority Leader of the Senate for introducing this bill. The Humane Society supports the legislation as introduced and agrees with the assessment of Senator Flores. This is a waning practice of tail docking of dairy cows. It's a mutilation procedure that occurs without anesthetic. A diminishing number of dairies here in California and across the nation now use this procedure, so it's kind of on the way out, and that so many dairy producers don't do it represents the fact that it's not needed in this day and age. Almost all of the major scientific veterinary groups support the idea of no tail docking. Canada, the American Veterinary Medical Association, you'll hear from the CVMA. It's a consensus position, and as Senator Flores noted, the opponents of the legislation do not object to the idea of eliminating tail docking as a general practice because it's an indefensible procedure. The public cares about the welfare of farm animals as evidenced by Proposition 2, and here we have just a very minor course correction to stop a mutilation procedure. We urge a yes vote.
Additional witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Christina Dillon DeCaro, representing the California Veterinary Medical Association. We are in support of the measure and completely concur with the statements with Mr. Pacelli. This was a practice that the veterinary community and the ag community was engaged in about a decade ago. We have since done a lot of research on this issue. It originally was done to benefit the animal for utter cleanliness and reduce the incidence of mastitis. We've since found through some scientific discovery that is really not the case, and so we have encouraged the practice be disbanded, and so we are in support of the measure.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? If I could ask you to please make room for the opposition witnesses. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members. Gary Conover, representing Western United Dairymen. We're the largest milk producer organization in the state, representing the vast majority of the dairies. A couple of things. There's probably about 1,800 dairies left in California. The 2,200 referred to by the opposition is an old number. We've had several dairies leave the business due to some economic constraints we're currently having, much like the rest of the nation. Of those 1,800 dairies, there's about 10% that still perform tail docking, intentional tail docking. It's generally done by using a rubber band or such device to restrict the flow of blood to the tail. The tail drops off, as accurately described in the docket. There are some feelings that it's a health and safety measure for the worker as well as the cow and the milk. As Mr. Pacelli correctly pointed out, we are not objecting to that part of the bill. We believe it is an archaic practice and do not support its continued intentional use. What we're disagreeing with is the procedure required during an emergency situation. Many times, the 1,600-pound milk cow, not many times, on rare occasions, a 1,600-pound milk cow will get her tail caught around a barbed wire inside of a gate, generally going into the milk parlor. She's very anxious to get in there, wants to be milk, get rid of the weight on her, and she will pull and tear the meat part of her tail. That tail is about 2/3 meat and 1/3 switch being the hair part of the tail. We believe that the consultation portion of the bill, with the practicability standard of calling a vet, sets up a risk liability. If you don't consult with your vet prior to the dairyman taking the emergency procedure, we think it sets up a risk liability between the two, and more so on the veterinarian than on the dairyman. The practical situation is the first thing dairymen do if they can get to the phone is call their veterinarian and say, I need to have you out here as soon as I can. Our problem is we have dairies in remote areas, particularly up in Humboldt County. I don't think we're talking about dairies within the Central Valley where the senator resides. Generally, large animal vets in the Central Valley can adequately visit a dairy within a reasonable period of time. But as up in Humboldt County, we have big problems, and it could be a couple of days before that vet actually visits the dairy. And then assuming that both the dairyman and the vet remember that the procedure had to be performed. What we believe the language does is try and set in statute a cluttered effect of what is practiced in the community. And we don't think it's necessary. We offered an amendment to simply strike the reference to being performed by a licensed veterinarian. We think that then allows the practice of ensuring the communication between the veterinarian and the dairyman to be unheeded without confusion within statute. Our concern is that we're able to treat the animals' pain and suffering as quickly as we can, unheeded by statutory confusion. And that is the amendment we're asking for. We do have a position of oppose unless amended. Thank you.
Dawn Clover with California Cattlemen's Association, also oppose unless amended pursuant to the language offered by the Farm Bureau and Western United Dairymen.
Noelle Kramers with the California Farm Bureau Federation. I think Gary did a good job of summing up our concerns. I want to just reiterate that we could very easily support the legislation if our concerns were addressed. For emergency situations, we think this is a very narrow situation, but we want to make sure that if an animal is in pain after injuring her tail, that the livestock owner could treat that animal immediately if a vet is not available.
Clarification. The proposed author's amendments, have you had a chance to see those and review them?
We have not.
Okay. This is a little bit out of the ordinary. What I'd like to suggest is that we have the parties, that we not proceed further with the issue, that we have the parties step outside and talk about the proposed amendments to see if there's a possible resolution.
Mr. Chair, I guess we could do that, but I guarantee you there'll be no possible resolution because what the opposition is asking for is an exemption. Am I incorrect? Please be truthful. Are you asking for an exemption? Is that based? Let's just save a little time here.
Well, the folks, if they're correct that they have not seen the amendments, it might benefit all parties to
We'll
have
be
a
back.
chance to review them and discuss them out of the glare of the spotlight.
I thought we were supposed to do this in the glare of the spotlight, Mr. Chair.
Well,
this is the
normally
public forum, and we would very much like to debate this in a public forum. This is where it belongs, and I very much know the opposition would very much like to go outside in a corner and discuss this, but this is, quite frankly, a very simple discussion. This is about whether or not the opposition wants a blanket exemption to this bill. Now, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, the reason we have these hearings and the reason that we have them in the public are to debate these issues. I can read the one sentence to the opposition and they can give me their answer, but I'm sure their answer is going to be that doesn't go far enough because we'd like a blanket exemption. I'm just not sure what that's accomplishes. I guess we could do this, but we'll come back and simply say that they're opposed.
Mr. Chair, the statement is not characteristic of our position. We're dealing with rare instances of an emergency situation. We'll repeat it, we have no objections to refraining from the practice of tail docking.
And all we're asking for is a phone call that they said they just do anyway.
Understand.
I'm not clear.
But
why.
I also understand that the committee's rules require substantive amendments to be submitted no later than 4 working days prior to the hearing. I'm willing to make an exception in the hopes that the parties can come to an agreement. I think that would be best. Other than that, the fallback would be to hold this over until next week, and I don't think anybody would like to do that, so I would encourage the parties to try to work out a solution.
And when would you like us back, Mr. Chairman? Because the Senate is also holding hearings that we'd like to attend.
I'd like to ask, I think we have...
Can you give us a time certain so we can make sure we're back here?
Sure, 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Very well. We'll come to the next item. I'd like to make an announcement that Senate Bill 774 by Senator Ashburn relating to social workers has been put over until the June 30th hearing. So if there's anybody here on that matter, please be notified that that has been put over to June 30th. We have, I believe Senator Yee was here.
He's presenting in another committee.
Okay. Senator Alquist is, Senator's not here either?
10 minutes.
Okay. Why don't we be in recess then for 5 minutes, then we'll reconvene. It is now 1:15, so we'll reconvene 10 before. The committee hearing is reconvening. We have Senator Alquist here presenting on item number 2, Senate Bill 38. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, and I appreciate your patience. SB 38 would develop a Silver Alert plan to quickly recover missing seniors with an impaired mental condition like Alzheimer's disease who have wandered away from home. It would do this by creating a statewide protocol to guide law enforcement agencies in receipt of a missing senior person report. Every 71 seconds, someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And California has the largest population of seniors with the disease in the entire nation. However, when a senior with Alzheimer's disease or dementia wanders away from home, there is no consistently applied alert system to aid in their recovery. And without going into much detail, according to the Alzheimer's Association, nearly 600,000 individuals in California have Alzheimer's disease. And within a generation, that number will double to over 1.1 million. And 1 in 8, look in the room here today, 1 in 8 seniors over age of 65 will have Alzheimer's. I mean, that's really a horrible number. The solution, unlike the original version of the bill, which has been amended, the original version required the Department of CHP to activate the emergency alert system as part of any Silver Alert plan. SB 38 would permit but no longer require CHP to use the EAS system at its own discretion. CHP and the Department of Finance opposed the original version of the bill over the concerns about using this EAS system, that it could hurt the Amber Alert system, and of course we would not want to do that. I have worked closely with CHP and other stakeholders to address these concerns, and to date I have heard of no opposition to the amended version of the bill. In fact, key stakeholders like the California Broadcasters Association and the San Jose Police Officers Association are in full support. Upon the receipt of federal funding, SB 38 would require CHP, in consultation with other stakeholders, Department of Justice, Emergency Management Agency, California Sheriff's Association, police chiefs, etc., to develop policies and procedures for law enforcement agencies to issue a missing senior person alert or Silver Alert. Law enforcement agencies would be required to immediately implement, absent extenuating investigations, the Silver Alert plan to be developed by the CHP. If CHP has not developed these policies and procedures, law enforcement agencies shall immediately use appropriate alert measures, which may include a cascade of interventions, which could include neighborhood canvassing and lighting of local digital signs, emergency digital information system, EDIS, critical reach software, which sends information to local fire departments, hospitals, businesses to assist in the recovery of missing persons, locally focused cell phone text message alerts, collaboration with 211 telephone system service providers, reverse 911 interactive community notification system. I've got some great witnesses and would like to turn it over to them.
Witnesses in support.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Joe Murphy. I'm a senior senator in the California Senior Legislature, which is the sponsor of this bill. Criticality of the bill lies in the fact that persons living with Alzheimer or other dementia disease and who roam are highly susceptible to injury or death within the first 24 hours of their disappearance. Immediate action in these cases is sorely needed. The usual 24-hour wait period for law enforcement to take action on missing persons must be set aside. We have concern for all persons suffering with dementia, but feel the initial focus of our energy should be on providing for those 65 and older who are highly sensitive and the most susceptible and vulnerable to the effects of the missing damages. Several states have already adopted measures, but California, who is usually the leader in the nation, has surprisingly not taken any action to provide this important protection for the afflicted seniors. Basic infrastructure to achieve the programs are already in place and only need some minor adjustments to incorporate Silver Alert. Just as in the case of Amber Alert, local law enforcement is given the discretion to institute appropriate actions. In most cases, this will involve a localized effort Occasionally, a decision to expand could be made if motor vehicles are involved, but in all other cases, the emergency alert system would not be used. It's imperative we establish this important early alert protection for our impacted seniors to avoid unnecessary injury or death. I urge you to vote yes on this measure.
Thank you, sir. Next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Spike Helmick. I'm the retired commissioner of the California Highway Patrol. I was fortunate to be in that position when we implemented the Amber Alert program. It's one of the most, I think, one of the most rewarding things that I was able to do in my 35-year career. I have a great deal of respect for the Highway Patrol. I'm very confident that with the guidelines that's in the bill, they can establish a program that will help a very select, but and probably small at times, group of people, but certainly one that needs the assistance of this program. I ask your support. I believe it can be established in a cost-effective, non-overburdening program, and I'm sure the benefits will be most greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Additional witnesses.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Lieutenant Brandon Johnson with the California Highway Patrol. We do not have an official position on this bill. As you know, we were opposed and did have an approved opposed position on the original version of the bill. We do think this is a well-intended bill. We've been working closely with the author's office to craft language in this amended version that we feel that addresses our concerns, and we will continue to work with the author's office on this bill. Our main concern is with this bill is that it may decrease the effectiveness of the Amber Alert.
If you don't have discretion to decide when it's appropriate.
Excuse me?
Your concern that it diminishes the effectiveness is based on
Yeah,
not
that's
having
correct.
the
In the original
discretion.
bill, we would automatically have to activate the EAS and get the whole system going. With this one, it leaves it up to the California Highway Patrol in order to see if there's specific criteria met and that we think it's appropriate to activate that EAS.
And if I read the bill correctly, the CHP would be involved in helping to develop the policies and guidelines.
That's correct.
Additional witnesses in support? Yes, you may use that microphone.
Lydia Dillon, volunteer for the AARP organization, and we support this bill.
Thank you, ma'am. Additional witnesses in support?
Kristen Heyman on behalf of Aging Services of California, representing over 100,000 seniors across the state of California. We're in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lillian Clark on behalf of the National Association of Social Workers, in support.
Thank you very much. Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Just a couple of questions, Senator, and then I'll turn it over for members for comments or questions. As I understand, with the amendments, the conditions that would be required to trigger a silver alert would be that a local agency receives a report of a missing individual and the person has impaired memory. Then the local agency shall implement the policies and procedures, which could include triggering the silver alert.
Which could include, yes.
And on the silver, on triggering the EAS system, it's up to CHP to determine that.
Very well. So that the bill requires the CHP to develop policies and procedures which include alert measures, and the bill requires the local agencies to implement these policies and procedures. But the agency, the local agency may request, permissively may request activation, and the CHP may, again, permissively activate the emergency alert system if appropriate.
Exactly correct. And this is all upon receipt of federal funding.
Very well. Members, those were the concerns or clarifications that I wanted to put on the record. Any comments or questions? Yes, Member Gilmore.
Thank you. Just a clarification, Senator, and I think you may have covered it in your last statement there. This is, I believe, former Commissioner Spike Helmick just mentioned that this was obviously would be on a limited number of people.
Yes.
The Amber Alert that was originally set up by the Highway Patrol, I don't know the exact cost of that, but maybe the Commissioner or the Lieutenant can answer the question about expanding this and the cost. Is that going to be federal funded totally?
This would only go into effect if we had the federal funding, and it's for a limited population, 65 and older, who really have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and certainly with 1 out of 8 people in California being diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, we're talking about a lot of people, and it's a basic kind of thing that people with Alzheimer's wander away from home, and so this is why we are doing this.
Very good. Thank you.
Very well. Member Furutani had a comment or question?
Yes. If in seeing the Amber Alert activated, the key element around it seemed to be that the child was abducted and they had a license plate or a description, and the Amber Alert then, as you could see it on the freeway, etc., would give those of us that are citizens an opportunity just to keep our eyes open to what's going on. Is a concern in the fundamental concern that you have around this group, my parents' age at this moment.
Or my age.
Not quite, but...
I'm 64.
Well, I'm 62, and I'm talking about my parents' age. So. Point I'm making, though, is it would seem, in my experience, that the issue in terms of Alzheimer's disease individuals or family members, when they get lost, it's local. You know, they're not like abducted by anybody, or they're just lost. So just a thought, and the issue and the essence of it, I think, is absolutely critical and important. But it would seem that the protocol would be better done at the local law enforcement level, where they know the community, they know the neighborhoods, they know potentially where people may go, rather than a statewide agency like the CHP, which deals with more. I could see that relative to abductions and people being spirited away in cars. So that's why I was just wondering if that could be approached. The protocol would be important.
Simpleman, if I might try to answer your concern, and I think it's a very valid concern. The same concern was raised when we initiated the Amber Alert program. The key is that the Highway Patrol is simply the person that pulls together local government and everyone to build these guidelines. There is guidelines right now that the Amber Alert is only utilized on a local level, just what you're talking about. But they needed a statewide agency. They need a statewide agency that has the capability, if and when, on very rare occasion, they activate it. The vast majority of Amber Alerts, you don't see the signs turned on. You don't see it over your TV or radio. Most of it is done just on the local level. The most infamous one was a young lady, Miss Runyon, that was kidnapped down in Orange County. That never was turned on statewide because they knew she was in that local area. The sheriff department did a wonderful job, and not a wonderful job, unfortunately, because the child was deceased, but in capturing the person. So your point is very well taken, but the bill establishes that the Highway Patrol, in conjunction with all the people you're referring to, will build these guidelines to ensure what you're asking for is how the process and how the procedure is operated.
Yeah, it's just in the context that the context of everything these days relative to budget, resources, and as we do bills in the legislature for mandating more work or more challenges for different agencies, whether or not we should be doing that or look at other folks to be able to do it. That's the concern. The essence of it and the importance of it is unquestionable. But
respectfully, I'd like to answer that also. This only would go into effect if it is completely paid by federal funding. The reason the CHP would be in charge is that they're the ones who would need to be developing the standards, but this is really going to be implemented at the local level. And you might say, well, why, Elaine, Senator, are you doing this bill? And it's because I want to see that in all 58 counties, that people who have Alzheimer's disease, who wander away from home, have the opportunity to be found quickly, because they can die or they can have very severe health implications. And so that's why I think this is a good approach.
Yeah, I had initially had the same concerns as Member Furutani, but as I heard the presentation this morning, It's a matter of developing policies and procedures which may include triggering the Amber Alert, but could well be
Possibly.
more localized.
That's the last choice, and that's up to the CHP.
So I think that the CHP's involvement in the drafting of the policies and procedures will be critical, because then they can develop what rules they will follow. And it could well be that it's in a certain situation it's more of a localized response. However, it could be larger if the situation warrants. Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator, I just had a couple questions, practically speaking. Most of these Amber Alert signs are on the freeway, correct?
The initial Amber Alert, if I might answer that program, did not include freeway signs. That is something that I implemented with the concurrence of the federal government in a very rare occasion. It is, I can't give you an exact number or something, but it's a very small percentage of Amber Alerts do you utilize the freeway signs.
If most of the time when we're doing with the Amber Alert, we're looking for a child who's been abducted, and we have some kind of vehicle description or something that we're looking for. Correct. The car. In this particular case, if someone has Alzheimer's or they're wandering around the streets, there's no vehicle description because that person isn't necessarily driving. He's not been abducted, or he or she has not been abducted, and it's more of a physical description. So I'm trying to think, practically speaking, you don't have the capability of putting pictures up, and I'm not sure if you want to for privacy's sake, and if you did have the capability, if you say we're looking for Joe Smith who's 70, he's 5'2", he's wearing an orange hat. I'm just wondering how effective it's going to be, and if we see it too much, does it take away from the dramatic effect when you see it? That's the only concern I have.
Well, obviously the guidelines have to be where it's very limited use, but I give you an example. I just talked to Sheriff John McGinnis here from Sacramento, and he gave an example recently on a case where they had a lady and they had a very good description of her clothing, size, and she walked away and was down at the American River, and on the bike path and the trail, and numerous people had passed her. And it was only when they put out something locally on a radio station that they started getting phone calls, said, gee, you better go down to the river very quickly because she's on that path. And sure enough, she was in poor health when they found her. But when they found her down there, thank goodness she's alive. So it would be, and again, it'd be up to the Highway Patrol to make it a very restrictive, very limited, but it is a process that has worked very successfully, and I think will help in those rare occasions when it's needed.
If I may, Mr. Chair, our intent, as stated initially, is to get action immediately and not wait the 24 hours and it is directed at the locals. If it ever gets to the level where a victim is in a car, and a lot of these victims are physically well and have driven cars, then it is possible it may get to that top level. But every case that goes to you'll have to help me, emergency alert system doesn't necessarily mean highway signs. We're talking about different levels of response, and a highway patrol would be judging which things to trigger. If a car was involved, of course, you'd have a license plate if it ever got to that point. So anyhow, we're trying to get some immediate action at the local level.
And you're absolutely correct in that some individuals, perhaps a limited number, with impaired memory may have access to a vehicle, and in those situations the alert may be the most appropriate, but there could well be other actions short of that for most other situations. Member Amiano, comment, question?
Yes, I'm very supportive. I think the bill is on the right trajectory, which is really bringing attention to this issue. All of us are getting older, but of course with the boomers, things like this need to have scrutiny and accountability, and I can't imagine an agency better than the California Highway Patrol. They have the expertise and also the depth of knowledge. The one thing I'm sure there's going to be many paths to this issue with people wandering away. Do you know of any other devices, for instance, an ID bracelet that might have a microchip in, some kind of GPS system that could also be preventable, when it gets to a certain stage, Alzheimer's?
It's an excellent point. It's kind of interesting. One of the things that just came out within the last month that they're now suggesting is a GPS chip in the shoe, actually in the heel of a person that's been diagnosed. And literally it's something that's not seen, it's never heard of, but they're testing it, and it's working very well. that simply you could almost monitor them from your own laptop at home. God forbid they get out and you don't know where they are.
Do that for the members of the legislature.
Myself.
I'm informed that Madera County has been looking at that, or if not actually implemented it. So, Senator, that may be another approach that you may wish to look at going forward. The chair initially had a non-recommendation. In light of the presentation and the information that's come out, the chair would urge an aye vote on this. I believe, if there are no other questions, I believe there was a motion. Is there a second? A motion made and seconded. Any additional discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call vote.
Arambula?
Aye.
Arambula, aye. Hagman? Aye. Hagman, aye. Almiano? Aye. Almiano, aye. Furtani? Aye. Furtani, aye. Gilmore? Aye. Gilmore, aye. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Ma? Ma, aye. Bill's out.
Very well. Bill is out. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, members.
No.
Senator Flores, we come back to your item. Would you give us an update on your discussions, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've engaged in discussions, and we're prepared to accept the Farm Bureau amendment today. However, we ask that we also require when an emergency procedure is performed that it's reported to CDFA within 30 days after the fact. Seems
Very
to
well.
be reasonable. You can do the procedure, just let us know 30 days hence that you did it. That's it.
And
Yes.
That's agreeable to all parties?
Unfortunately, our members would be concerned with the reporting requirement to a government agency. Not only you're creating a new cost for that agency, so given today's budget climate, does that mean that we then have to pay a fee when we report? There's a lot of concerns that we have about reporting to a government agency.
Any additional comments?
Without running it by my CCA members, I would have to echo the comments of the Farm Bureau in terms of new reporting requirements for husbandry practices.
Mr.
Gary
Conover.
Conover, Western United Dairymen. I think that amendment, that particular CDFA reporting requirement is a cost item. That'll get held up in appropriations. We don't want that to happen. We want the bill to move. With the amendment, it removes 200,000 dairy animals from the practice of tail docking in one swoop. That is a significant movement by the industry, let alone the cattle that would be removed as well.
I must say, I think the proposed amendment appears reasonable. What I'd like to do is allow the committee, the majority, to vote. There may well be some questions or comments before a vote, however. I do note that the committee, that the bill is double referred to agriculture, and that this committee always reserves jurisdiction to pull a bill back if the ultimate amendments as they're written are not in conformance with the representations today. Member Gilmore, I believe you had a question or comment?
Just a comment. We already have a law on the books in the penal code for cruelty to animals. I was just I would rather see rather than using the penal code for the hammer here, I would rather see a regulatory process put in place rather than adding on to a law that is really already on the books. I don't see a need for this myself.
Additional comments or questions, clarifications? Member Ma.
Okay, so what is the final proposed amendments that with the reporting to CDFA or just the call?
It's the fact that you can perform the emergency procedure, which has always seemed to be the worry here, to be held up, slow, and that we would eliminate the references to the veterinarian, and yet we would incur a simple report to CDFA. Since it happens so very rarely, as the opponent said, so very, 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 very rarely, then we would simply say, give notice to CDFA that it occurred. So that way we indeed can find out. I mean, you start seeing a lot of letters coming from some remote place in the hills. CDFA says, if we ever go out there, it's 4 letters in a year. Maybe we should go check out practices. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to do. As we move forward, we can easily deal with the cost factor for this, since it's so rarely used, by asking folks to help us with a fee-based type of approach to this. So I think we can deal with that in appropriations. And Mr. Gilmore said, this happens so very rarely, and rather than add another section to this code, the reason we're in this committee is because I don't think there has been a prosecution for tail docking under our current statutes, and I think that's under our cruelty statutes. Therefore, we're here to try to make sure that we catch more folks who are doing this.
Okay, thank you.
Member Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we're talking about very rarely, could you quantify that in some form of the 1,700 dairy farms in the dairies in the state? About how often does it occur?
Under the emergency, we don't have a number, but I hazard to guess within the dairy industry, we milk about 1.7 million cows at one instance. So that's about 10% of those 200,000, let's say, tail dock. So the practice of tail docking is going to be eliminated. There apparently seems to be concern by the author and the sponsor that under the emergency need to dock an animal's tail, that there is a loophole that would allow a dairy to dock all their 2,000 cows. And that is not going to happen. When those animals go to sale at the auction yard, somebody's going to pick up on the fact that Bob Smith is sending 20 culled animals into the auction yard and all their tails are docked. That's the notice. That is notice right away. I don't have a figure for you, Assemblymember Hill. I think the senator is right. He's added a couple of rarelies to it, but it is a rare instance where the animal's tail is breached by stepped on or caught in a gate or something like that. The concern we have is what the statute is going to set up because of that rarity. Let the common farming practice take care of the rarity situation, and let the auction yard take care of the tail docking notice.
Thank you.
Member Amiano?
Yeah, has anybody asked the cows how they feel? I think it's a special interest group that has been remiss here. I think the senator, and with all due respect to the opponents, has really done a yeoman's job of trying to reach a compromise. And whether or not that ever happens, I'm ready to send this out of committee.
Thank you, Tom.
Additional questions or comments? Member Furutani.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that the committee would appreciates the time that people have spent to try to resolve this. I can see where the conflict is. The docking part of it is one piece of the puzzle, but there's a bigger issue here at hand, pretty obviously, in terms of who's getting told what to do by whom. And so I don't know if it's the original bill I like better, or this bill, the amendment, or where we're at. If you could clarify that. I know we have a motion on the floor, and I've really appreciated it seriously, because I've never been on an ag committee to learn more about something. I'm from the South Bay and L.A. County, and we used to have a lot of dairies, and as kids I could do a whole steam, a whole thing for you from school, so it's of interest. I'm not being facetious.
Well, wasn't there a commercial about cows in Berkeley or something?
Anyway, we could move this. I would appreciate it.
Very well. Then, Member Hagman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just going to restate the obvious, but if we're talking about 1.7 million cows, roughly, and if we talk out the 200 that are still in practice today, and we're talking, let's say, 100 emergencies or something, not even that many, wouldn't this normally be a regulatory process type of thing and not a penal code section for the industry? And isn't the industry under the Food and Ag, and wouldn't they be looking at this stuff? And if they are mistreating their animals in one way or the other, when that's tail docking or they're not given the proper medicines or healthy living conditions, isn't that falling under the cruelty for animals? I'm just wondering, is this really necessary, for what we're looking at? I'm one of those things that if we can avoid putting 30 or 3,000 new bills or new laws in the books every year, God knows the state has too many as it is. The more regulations, the more problems we make it, the more, people just pack up their bags and leave the state. If someone is mishandling an animal, they should be prosecuted. There's codes for that right now. If this is just another jump through hoops type of measure, then I can't be supportive of it.
A couple of clarifications. The bill, I believe, is double referred to agriculture.
Yes.
And the author's intent is to have this be moved today as proposed to be amended along the lines that you've outlined, Senator.
Yes.
Very well. If there is no further discussion, then the chair would entertain motions on this matter.
Mr. Chair, moved.
Second.
Move as proposed to be amended. Very well.
Mr. Chair, for clarification purposes, could we have the amendments reiterated?
Yes. Would you care to restate the amendment, Senator?
And I will have whose staff will be working on this. Okay. What we're trying to do is to take what the Farm Bureau have recommended in terms of that section and simply add a reporting function to this, and that is 30 days after such, emergency procedure that it be reported to the California Department of Food and Ag. That's it.
And I hope that we all, as we leave this issue today, understand that the real significance, I think, of the bill is that it provides for the prohibition of docking, of tail docking. That we should not lose sight of. And I think that both sides have agreed to that, which I think is a solid step forward. How we deal with limited situations, emergencies where there may be danger or pain caused to an animal, and how that's handled, I think is what the amendments propose to do. I believe the bill will leave this committee today. The chair will be not voting, not because I don't appreciate the effort that's gone into the resolution, but more on procedural grounds that these types of amendments should be best handled with a little bit of advance notice so that staff can do its necessary due diligence. With that, roll call vote. There was a motion, and Mr. Furtani seconded.
Arambula?
Not voting.
Arambula not voting. Hagman? No. Hagman not voting. Amiano? Amiano, aye. Furtani?
Aye.
Furtani, aye. Gilmore? No. Gilmore, no. Hill? Hill, aye. Ma? Ma, aye. Bill's out.
The bill passes.
Thank you. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Senator Yee, welcome. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's good seeing you and members. This bill is a rather straightforward bill. Human trafficking is not only a problem within the state of California, but it's a worldwide problem, and particularly in the Bay Area, as you can imagine, it is becoming a difficulty that we find in all segments of our society and all areas of a jurisdiction. This bill simply would, SB 557, which is simply say that any real property that is used to facilitate human trafficking to be declared as a public nuisance seized by the court until the nuisance is abated, and further subjects the trafficker to a cost of seizure and a civil fine of up to $25,000. I hope that with this, it is one more tool in the toolbox of trying to squash and eliminate this horrible situation of human trafficking. And with that, urgent item.
Move the bill.
Second.
The bill's been moved and seconded. Witnesses in support.
Nicole Wertelman on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco. This bill will help decrease the instances of human trafficking, and we are strongly supportive.
Additional witnesses.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dan Filisato on behalf of Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office in strong support.
Matt Gray on behalf of taxpayers for improving public safety and support.
Very well.
Mr. Chair, I just want to note that finally I have a bill that the District Attorney Association is in support of. L.A.
Yes. Let me see if there's any witnesses in opposition. First, Member Ma, and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you very much, Senator Yee. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, and In our district in San Francisco, we have had many human trafficking arrests, very difficult to prosecute. I think this is a good tool in the toolbox to try to ensure that the human traffickers don't try to come to California. At least I think this is a good measure. So thank you.
Any additional witnesses in support? Any in opposition? Senator, the staff has shown me some proposed language. Have you had a chance to review that as an amendment?
I think they've shared it with my staff, and if you could amplify on that amendment.
I believe allow me to read it. It says, upon conviction of a violation of Section 236.1, when real property is used to facilitate the commission of the offense, and here's a pertinent part, and the offense involves illegal gambling, lewdness, assignation, or prostitution. So it would limit it to certain situations.
And Mr. Chair, my staff has talked to me about it, and I understand that is the wish of the committee, and I will go along with that.
Very well, and I understand the Republicans are fine with that also. Very well. Any additional discussion or questions? Seeing none, a roll call. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Chair.
No, I want to thank the chair for bringing this up, because you always want to think of what if all the possibilities that could be there if you don't have the restrictive language on it. We all think in one thing, that house in the city that's been used for illegal activity for a long time. But there's a lot of instances, well, I don't know of a lot of them, but you can see where maybe someone's using domestic labor, and clean their house. You're going to forfeit the whole house. Or maybe it's domestic labor in a hotel or something like that. That it could be different. So you have all these different scenarios. So I appreciate the amendments and appreciate the author for accepting the amendments, and I can support it now.
Yes, Member Gilmore.
As well, I commend the author for the bill, and I certainly thank you for taking the amendments.
Thank you very much. And if I can just amplify on a comment that Assemblymember Ma, in our area of the city, where it's predominantly residential, even there we're finding that there are homes that are being rented out and used, and it's so nondescript that nobody thinks it's happened, and unfortunately it is happening, and it's permeating in all aspects of our community, and hopefully this will help add to the tools to try and address this problem seriously. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your consideration, Senator. I think it's a good bill, and it's made even better when we're able to get unanimous support from committee members. So,
with your help, I thank you.
With that, if there's questions or comments, Member Amiano.
Just, I appreciate the Senator's graciousness on the amendment. However, I do think that labor practices can be a tool in this area, and so that we could probably work on something else that would do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very well. If there's no other comments or questions, there's a motion and a second, and we'll take roll call vote.
Arambula?
Aye.
Arambula, aye. Hagman? Aye. Hagman, aye. Amiano? Amiano, aye. Furutani?
Aye.
Furutani, aye. Gilmore? Aye. Gilmore, aye. Hill? Hill, aye. Ma, aye. That's it.
Very well. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Just a clarification on one item. The chair earlier had mentioned a request to put over the item by Senator Ashburn, SB 774. I had, in fact, put the item over to June 30th. I was asked if a staff member or a member of this committee could present on behalf of Senator Ashburn. The parliamentarian informed me that is not the case because I had made the announcement, and individuals who might be in the audience had already left based on my statement. So we will, in fact, put this over, but we'll allow Senator Ashburn to present first as a special item of business because it is double referred and it has its second hearing that afternoon. So as to not inconvenience the senator and allow the bill to move forward, we will accommodate him in that regard. So with that, Madam Secretary, we're done. Wonderful. Thank you, staff, for excellent work, and with that, we are adjourned.